us. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Some of you are joining us from very, very far away. Thank you for making the time. We are delighted to have Bhante Dhammadipa with us, as always. Bhante has been a deeply loved and revered teacher for many years at our institution now. And most of you know about him, so I will not go into too much detail. We have already, gone 10 minutes into time. So I will just begin by saying that Bhante Dhammadipa is today going to start a teaching which many of us and our students have been looking forward to. The Yogācāra school is not very well known or studied in the Indian context, and since many of us, including our yoga students, have a very keen interest in meditation, Bhante has specially selected this particular chapter. And without further ado, Bhante, I'm so sorry, Bhante, for this delay. The floor is yours.
Please start teaching.
I don't know what is the button.
You just speak. You just speak. You just speak into it.
Hello, hello. Okay, you want to do some introduction?
I do it from the other one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A big confusion. Let us start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So I am to deliver 12 days course on the 6th chapter of the Sanskrit Sutra, which is the base for our understanding of the Yogācāra tradition, one of the most important traditions of the Buddhist teachings as far as psychology and philosophy is concerned. And I am aware there are some students of meditation here, also of yoga. Are there any students of Chinese, by the way? No, no one. Very interesting, no students of Chinese come. Anyway, this work is unfortunately not available in the original. There are passages here and there. So we have to rely either on Tibetan or on Chinese. I myself don't know Tibetan, so I rely on the Chinese translation. And I use the standard translation of Xianzang. And the Samdhinirmocana Sūtra, as you may know, for those who study Buddhism, you should know, in the Mahayana philosophy, we have two traditions. We have the Madhyamika and we have the Yogācāra. According to the tradition of the Yogācāra, Buddha has turned the three wheels of Dharma, three Dharma Chakra Pravartana. In the Chinese tradition, you will find many divisions. Chinese tradition especially is important for the syncretic schools, which tries to combine different approaches to the study of Dharma from points of view, from different points of view. So the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma is according to Yogācāra. The first turning of the wheel of Dharma is based on the Four Noble Truths that all students of Buddhism study and should be familiar with. And it is the base for our understanding of Buddhism in general. And as we should know, and we must always emphasize, what the Buddha is teaching basically is what he has realized under the Bodhi tree, which is the dependent origination. And the dependent origination has basically in Buddhism three most important interpretations. The first interpretation is dependent origination based on karma. You will find the same interpretation also with Madhyamika. Actually, Nagarjuna in the Madhyamika Karikas actually does not add anything new to the classical interpretation of dependent origination. Now, the second interpretation of the dependent origination is based on the alaya consciousness, the evolution of everything comes from the mind itself. What mind? The what we call a store consciousness. The store consciousness is called alaya. Alaya Vijnana. This alaya Vijnana is the consciousness from which, so to say, the world with all the variety of phenomena develops. And it is basically the impermanent consciousness. It is called alaya because it dwells, and it dwells, the consciousness in which dwells is the actually our experience of the world in samsara. That is why even in Pali the Buddha is called Anoka. Oka means a house. The Buddha has no house in this world, therefore he is free from the world. So this alaya consciousness is very similar to what students of Theravada know as bhavanga. Bhava means existence, anga here means cause. The cause of existence is consciousness. So this idea is not new. You have even in the Dhammapada, even in the Samyutta Nikaya, you have many passages like Chittena niyate logo, Chittena parikasa, Chittasa, Eka Dhammasa, Sabbe Dhamma Vasam Anvagu. The world is led by the mind. The world is put together, controlled by the mind. all the phenomena are under the reign of one phenomena or in the power of one phenomena, which is a mind. But normally, Theravada, same like Sarvastivada, they are so-called the realistic schools. In Theravada, just like in Sarvastivada and other schools related to the discipline of the disciples, leading to the state of Arahat, which Arahat is also Buddha. These schools still, despite all this emphasis on the mind as being the creator, container of the work of all the phenomena, like in the first verse of Dhammapada, still the world is something which is there. So in the Theravada Abhidharma, it is a Pure Jata Pachaya among the 24 conditions analyzed in the Theravada philosophy. It is a condition which comes, so to say, which is there before the mind. Mind appears because there is something to be differentiated, to be cognized. Now we get into the Mahayana, the non-dualistic approach to Buddhism, and this approach is very important. Actually, this approach is, if we want to understand the perfect state of enlightenment, the enlightenment, the omniscience in all aspects, according to Mahayana, the Buddha has also, the Arahat has also omniscience, but not omniscience in all aspects. Sarva Akara, Sarva Yata. In order to get the Sarva Akara, Sarva Yata, the omniscience in all aspects, in a way, so the Mahayana teaching, you have to adopt a non-dualistic view. And the Alaya consciousness is the consciousness from which the duality we will talk about develops. So the consciousness is not dualistic in its nature, but it develops from alaya, from the consciousness which dwells in the world. Alaya is from the Sanskrit root li, for the students of Sanskrit. Li means to stick. So because we are sticking to the world, we are not Buddhas. And who sticks? Of course, the consciousness. And the consciousness which sticks is the base for the impurity we experience in samsara. Then you have another school of Yogācāra, which emphasizes the development of all the phenomena from the Buddha nature itself. This is Zen, this is Dzogchen, most of the tantric traditions. So the Buddha nature is called the Tathagata Garbha, the matrix of Tathagata in all beings, or the Alaya consciousness schools. Not all beings have the Buddha nature. For this school, and most of the Mahayana schools, they have this idea that all beings, in the sense that they have mind, they have the Buddha nature. And the world is, so to say, can develop this suchness aspect of the mind. So you have three approaches to the interpretation of the dependent origination. The Samdhinirmocana Sūtra is the base for the mere consciousness school, which has influenced very much, in fact, all schools of Buddhist thoughts, especially in China, but also in Tibet. So the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, since we have already mentioned three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, was in Rajagaha. And this is where the Buddha has taught, according to the tradition, the transcendental wisdom sutras. There are many transcendental wisdom sutras, a big complex, and they are the base for understanding the non-dualistic the non-dualistic schools of Buddhism. In a way, they all in some way or another are connected with Yogācāra, because the Yogācāra is the only school of non-dualistic Buddhism which have a systematic explanation of the meditation of samatha and vipassana. It is very important, and as you may know, in Chinese tradition you have also the gradual path and the sudden enlightenment path. All are in a way different interpretation of the Chittamatrata. So if we wish to understand the non-dualistic approach of Buddhism, this Sanskrit Sutra is the base for Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra. Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra of, according to Chinese tradition, of Maitreya, according to Tibetan tradition of Asanga. Asanga may have been the historical person or mythical person. He is a teacher of Asanga anyway. So this Maitreya is, so to say, the source of both the school explaining dependent origination on the base of Alaya and the school explaining dependent origination on the base of the Buddha nature. This book that I have translated also into my language, the Samdhinirmocana Sūtra, is base for the Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra. Actually, Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra, Sangha is quoting practically the whole work, except the first chapter, which is introduction, and which brings us to the mythology. As you may know, mythology is very important for enlarging the scope of our mind, especially in our time, the time of modern civilization is a time of reducing the scope of the mind to very basic functions. So our language is getting more and more simple. our thinking is getting more and more simple. So the Mahayana Sutras, Samdhinirmocana Sūtra is not an exception. It starts with a mythological aspect. So the third turning of the wheel of Dharma takes place in also in Vaishali, but especially in the divine abodes, where the greatness of the abode of Tathagata, which is a pure land, actually all non-dualistic schools of Buddhism, all Mahayana schools, have to do with the pure land. Pure land is the real nature of the mind, simile of the real nature of the mind. So no wonder most of the Mahayana works, practically almost all, bring us to the scope of allegory, scope of mythology, to bring our mind to the dimension of liberation, which is the dimension of suchness. The non-dualistic aspect of liberation is suchness. According to this tradition, the Arahat also realizes suchness, but his realization of suchness is not yet perfect because he still believes in the personal liberation. The non-dualistic schools of Buddhism, of course, cannot believe in the personal liberation because the mind is suchness, and this is what is to be realized. And the realization of suchness is the realization of the true nature of the mind. This Samdhinirmocana Sūtra brings us step by step to this realization. And it does it on the same structure, same principles, like the Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra, just like the Visuddhimagga is the most important work concerning the meditation in the Theravada tradition. The Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra is the most important work concerning the meditation in the, what we can say, the non-dualistic approach to meditation. Yet, very important to understand, only the one part, small part of Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra actually deals with the Bodhisattva path and with the non-dualistic understanding of Buddhism. Asanga, just like Nagarjuna, the two founders of the two great Mahayana traditions, they both took as the source the Shravaka tradition, the tradition of the disciples, and they interpret the non-dualistic meditation on the base of the actually the passages or understandings connected with the non-dualistic approach, which you will find also in the Pali or Sanskrit sutras written for the purpose of realizing the state of Arahat. The state of Arahat is the body of liberation. Every Buddha has a body of liberation. But the perfectly realized Buddha, who has Anuttara, Samyak, Sambodhi, who has the highest liberation, he is so to say not only as a liberation body, but he has also the body of Dharma. That means he has the liberation in all aspects, liberation through understanding of the suchness. Without the suchness, you cannot understand the reality in all aspects. And this reality in all aspects actually is one reality. So in this reality, the four noble truths become the one truth of suchness. We will talk about it later. And this is the perfect liberation, into which this Samdhinirmocana Sūtra also wants to bring us through many skillful means. So, in order to understand the Samdhinirmocana Sūtra, it has, we can divide it same like the Yogācāra Shastra, we can divide it into three parts. The first part is concerned with the Yogācāra. Yogācāra means literally the pasture, where the cows are grazing. For a yogi, this is a tradition of the yoga. Some of you may be students of yoga. In Patanjali system also, similar principle. The pasture of the yogi is the mind. By understanding the Chitta Vritti, we can go beyond the world. If we don't understand Chitta Vritti, we can't go beyond the world. The similar idea you will have Buddhism. You can only go beyond the world by understanding the mind. That's why you need Yogācāra. The conduct of the yogi is to understand the mind. And in this tradition, which mind? Of course, the Alaya mind. This is a tradition. Samdhinirmocana is a base. Sutra is a base for the tradition, explaining the world on the base of the Alaya mind. Alaya mind is the Adana mind. Adana mind means the mind which appropriates, which has a upadhi, which has a body, and the mind has upadhi, which appropriates them. They don't belong to anyone, but the alaya appropriates them. So due to the appropriation of alaya, our consciousness develops. Our consciousness develops, due to which Vasubandhu explains in the Trimshika, very important work for understanding the Chitramatara tradition. It starts with the verses. Atma Dharma Upachara Vividha Pravartate Vijnana Parinamo Asau Parinama Sachatrita. So this due to the upachara, due to the habit, we can translate upachara as a habit, or we can translate upachara also as a familiarity. Due to the familiarity of Atma of the self in persons and in the dharmas, our consciousness, which is one, actually becomes three, or becomes a different types of consciousnesses. And this one consciousness is the source. Then in this tradition, you have the eighth consciousness, you have the seventh consciousness, and you have the six consciousnesses. They have all different names. The eighth consciousness is called Chitta. The seventh, wonderful. Okay. Chitta here means chinoti iti chitta. It collects the seeds of the previous experiences, therefore it is called chitta. Therefore it is also called store consciousness in English, because it collects these bijas, the seeds of our previous experiences, and so to say, transform our vision transforms our vision of the world on the base of these so what we experience is actually the transformations of the consciousness, which is one, but becomes many. Because we appropriate, we have the individualizing consciousness, or we have the consciousness maniate iti citam, agent consciousness. And the agent consciousness is that consciousness which is, so to say, seeing the six differentiating consciousnesses as something belonging to imaginary self. So it is the agent. Then you have the six classical consciousnesses, but they all develop from one consciousness. This is Yogācāra. And in order to get liberation, we have to go back to the one consciousness in which we have to find the suchness nature. So this is the non-dualistic approach. So the Gochara, that's where a yogi finds pasture. Pasture is a mind, and this mind is moving, but the suchness does not move. The mind is moving, but the suchness does not move. So you will find similarity, of course, with Patanjali's system. No doubt Patanjali was influenced by Buddhism, and maybe he tried to reform some Buddhist ideas. And this but the Yogācāra is a non-dualistic school, so it cannot accept the idea of Prakriti. Things develop from the mind itself and are contained in the mind itself. And because we are dwelling in this world, therefore we experience this mind not as it is, but as its vritti or parit or transformations. So the realization is called chitta paravritti. It is the revolution back to the natural state. This is based on the sutras of the transcendental wisdom. Now, in the third revolution of the Dharma, which took place in Vaishali, which I started, and which took place in the mythical directions. So the Buddha explains how the actually the mind, which is one, develops into different realities which we experience. And these realities, they are, so to say, or selfless realities. And the selfless nature of reality is the only true realization. And selfless nature of reality is the selfless nature of the mind. Because all phenomena are, as Dhammapada explains, are rooted in the mind, are contained in the mind. Now, so the first, second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter, and fifth chapter, these 2, 3, 4, 5, these 4 chapters, they explain the Yogācāra, which is the mind. Without understanding the mind, we cannot practice correctly, which is charya or charita. The 6th chapter and the 7th chapter explains how we, when we understand the mind, how we should practice. We will be dealing in this course with the 6th chapter, which explains the shamatha and vipassana. Shamatha and vipassana is the base for our correct practice of the paramis. And the bodhisattva's practice is the practice of the paramis, translated in English as the perfections. But the perfections actually mean the means of attaining the other shore. Paramita. Without the means of attaining the other shore, and the other shore is, of course, we can only attain by samadhi. This is a yoga, same like Patanjali, same like Vedanta. Now, even in the Samyutta Nikaya and in the Theravada tradition, the Buddha says, if you want to go to the other shore, like if you want to go to the other shore of the Ganges, not at its source in the Himalayas, but somewhere in Bengal or in Bihar. You have to be an excellent swimmer. If you're not an excellent swimmer, you will never get to the other shore. And he compares precisely getting to the other shore to the practice of dhyana, which is the main content of training in samadhi in the Buddhist tradition. So unless you are well perfected in the dhyana, well perfected in the samadhi, you will not have the strength of mind to reach the other shore. That's why first you have the 6th chapter explaining the shamatha and vipassana. Then you have the questions of Avalokiteshvara explaining the practice of the perfections, 6 perfections. Then you have the final chapter, questions of Manjushri, explaining the fruits of the correct conduct, the fruits of the yogi. You have some similarity with Patanjali also. So in order to understand yoga, you have to know the Yogācāra of the yoga, which is a mind. You have to know the correct conduct of the yogi based on understanding the mind. And you have to know the result of the correct conduct, which is the perfect realization of the Buddha based on the penetration, complete penetration, the suchness of all phenomena. That is the omniscience in all aspects. That's why, as we will see, the samadhi, the correct practice of samadhi is the a must for attaining the omniscience in all aspects. Without the correct practice of samadhi, you cannot attain the omniscience in all aspects. So in this course, we will be mostly concerned with the correct practice of samadhi based on understanding of suchness. So now, as in terms of introduction, the chitta being the Yogācāra, the mind being the base, the understanding of the mind being the base, you need, first of all, the 2nd chapter, you need to understand what the 2nd chapter deals with. You have to understand the ultimate reality. Second chapter deals with the questions of different bodhisattvas concerning the ultimate reality. So there are different sections which explain, first of all, that this ultimate reality is avigyapti. It cannot be manifested. It cannot be manifested in terms of speech. It cannot be manifested in terms by body. It can only be manifested and it can be revealed rather than manifested by direct experience. What is the abhisamaya? Without the abhisamaya, we will never understand the reality. even the conventional reality, this is also the emphasis of this tradition, even the conventional reality you will not understand without understanding the ultimate reality as it is. So this ultimate reality is not to be understood by any differentiation, any differentiating thoughts, any logic. It must be understood by direct experience, by experience of correct samadhi. And the correct samadhi in this tradition, the tradition of Buddhist logic, developed from the Yogācāra tradition, the Vignāda Dharma Kirti, they were also in a way students of the Yogācāra. And in this tradition, the samadhi, the correct samadhi, is a pramana, is a proof of the true reality. It is a pratyaksha. It is pratyaksha. It is what is to be realized immediately without any intermediate factors like vikalpa, differentiation. So it is beyond prapancha, beyond the expansion of the thinking based on logic or desire. This is very important to understand, otherwise the deep meaning of this chapter will not come out. Then the last to ask to explain the ultimate reality. This no, also not by chance, is Subhuti. As you may know, Subhuti is also the one who the Buddha authorizes to explain the transcendental wisdom in the Transcendental Wisdom Sutras. He is a top among the Buddhist disciples in his practice of Arana Samadhi, the Samadhi without a conflict, based on his deep practice of Maitri. So according to the commentaries, the Subhuti would never take pindapat, food, dana, without first going into the Samadhi of Maitri. And wherever he appears, people in trouble, in dispute, came to harmony because of the depths of this Arana Samadhi, Samadhi free from conflict. This Samadhi has a terrible power. And it is, as we will see, the Samadhi of love, as well as other divine abodes, are the best means also to practice the paramis. To understand the practice of paramis, the best skillful means, this is the teaching of the Nagarjuna. The best skillful means is the deep practice of the divine abodes. So the Subhuti says that he attended the conference of the non-Buddhist teachers where they were discussing different approaches to understanding the ultimate reality. And he says that if one thinks that he can understand the ultimate reality by some explanations, this is only abhimana. It is due to one's delusions that the self, mind based on the self, can understand. ultimate reality. It is impossible. One can do only possible, cannot do impossible. So when one understands the true nature of the ultimate reality, which is also explained in Abhidharmakosha. Abhidharmakosha says the ultimate reality is not what non-Buddha sees, but it is only what the Arya sees. You have to have the direct experience of the ultimate reality in order to understand the even conventional reality. And this is precisely what the second chapter explains. And Buddha is the one who stays in the understanding of the ultimate reality. So his mind does not dwell in the world. Then the third chapter explains about the mind, as I have explained, this mind as chitta, mind as manas, mind as vijnana, differentiated mind. So it explains that this alaya consciousness is like a mantra. Very similar to Lanka Sutra. No doubt the Zen tradition is greatly based on the Lanka Sutra, which the Bodhidharma has taught in China, so is the tradition. So this alaya consciousness is like a mantra. Due to a mantra, a skillful magician, our mind can produce an elephant. And we non-enlightened beings, if the magician is especially skillful, we non-enlightened beings, we see this elephant as being there. So this elephant is like a diseased eye. This is what the Vasubandhu also explains. Like the eye with diseased eye with ophthalmia can see two moons, and it believes that there are two moons in the sky. Now, if the non-enlightened beings, his dependent origination is like the form of this elephant seen by a diseased eye. This is what Vasubandhu explains, like in Trisvabhava Nirveshna. Now, the healthy eye does not see any elephant. It sees just the wood. It's just a piece of wood. It is not an elephant. But due to the magic, the mantra of the alaya, we see something which is not there. So instead of two realities, usually in Buddhism, as Nagarjuna explained, you cannot understand Buddhism. Same idea you will find in all Buddhist schools. You cannot understand Buddhism, you cannot understand yoga without understanding the conventional reality, which is called samvrti. Actually, it is explained in the especially non-dualistic tradition by Chandrakirti. Also here, it is explained samvarnoti. Samvarnoti, the conventional reality is that which hides the ultimate reality. How does it hide the ultimate reality? Well, because our consciousness, by this mantra of the Alaya Vijnana, brings the conviction that there is an object and there is a subject as separate entities which do not exist in reality. And this is the result of the mantra of the Alaya consciousness, which creates the illusion of the object and subject. But this illusion comes from the mind itself. It does not come from outside. It comes from the mind itself. So instead of two realities, we have in this tradition three realities. And this is the what the Buddha has taught in Vaishali. This is a third turning of the wheel of Dharma. We have the Parikalpita reality. Parikalpita reality is a reality to which we cling. We cling to this reality because it's based on the names, sentences, as we will learn in Samdhinirmocana Sūtra, based on syllables, based on generalization, based on particularization.
Please wait. I think there is some technical issue. Please bear with us. The team is taking what is the problem. It should start in few minutes.
Sorry for the interruption because of the technical problems. Now we continue. Yes, Bhante.
When was it interrupted? I don't know. When was it interrupted? I don't know now what they heard or they
Yeah.
did not hear.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Bhante, I think you were explaining about.
Yeah, it is a recording on.
Hello, Bhante, can you hear me?
1 minute.
3 types of realities.
Bhagesh.
3 types of realities.
Yes, 3 types of reality. He was discussing about parikalpita.
Oh, okay. No, we don't see.
Please, continue.
Okay, so I guess we were talking about the 3 types of reality. They are explained in the 3rd chapter. So to repeat, they are called the parikalpita. Parikalpita means fabricated all around. Kalpita we can derive from the Sanskrit word, which has, we can say, putting together, fabricating, putting together from these many important words in yoga, kalpana, vikalpa. So here, parikalpita means fabricated. What is fabricated? It's just fabricated. It does not have any real nature. This is explained in the 5th chapter. The 4th chapter and the 5th chapter, they are connected. Very important. The 4th chapter explains the 3 levels of reality, on base of which the Buddha in Vaishali has explained the reality. And the 5th chapter is the ultimate teaching, which explained the asvabhava, the non-real nature, not non-real, the non-self-existent nature of these 3 realities. This is the ultimate teaching of the Yogācāra. There are 3 realities that we have to understand in order to understand our experience in the world. And these realities, they are all without any self-existent nature. Then you will have the nitartha, you will have the meaning for the adepts, for the enlightened. The other meanings, they are neyartha, the leading to the ultimate meaning. So the ultimate meaning, that is Buddha's Sandhi Bhasha, hidden language, you can only find by understanding the substance lessness or selflessness of the three realities. So the first reality is fully fabricated. As the Trimshika says, yena yena vikalpena yat yat vastu vikalpyate vikalpito eva asau svabhavato na vidyate. Very wonderful. Whatever you imagine by your differentiation, it's only imagined, but it can never exist in its own nature. It has no own characteristics. So the parikalpita is completely free of any real characteristic. It has no characteristics whatsoever. It is just parikalpito. It is just fabricated all around. And there is nothing really true in it. But yet, what we cling to is not the reality, but is the concepts we make of reality based on the names and on generalizations. This is the reality we cling to. The true reality we do not know. That's why, especially the non-dualistic schools, the Yogācāra, the true reality only the Buddha knows. The Supreme Buddha knows. Even the Arahat, even the realized Bodhisattva does not know. The true suchness of the mind, only the perfectly realized Buddha knows. So we all are, what we attach to is not the reality, but it is the concepts of reality that we produce in our mind by names and generalization and particularization based on names. Now we are humans, so we have developed language, but we can also produce a reality by, like the other beings that do not need to communicate by language, but they still communicate. And through this communication, they also have impression of reality according to their conventional reality. And the conventional reality is different. So, as Vasubandhu explains, the gods see the same river as the flow of light. We humans see it as a flow of water, river. The fish see it in a very different way. The hungry ghosts see it also in a very different way. So, but it is the same flow of water. And the same flow of water we experience according to our conventional reality, according to our differentiations. The conventional reality is based on differentiations. The ultimate reality is not based on differentiations. And we cling because of the differentiations which are not based on the reality, but based on our conventional ideas of the reality. So you have this parikalpita is like the appearance by magic of the elephant. The form of the elephant, the akara, the astyakara, is our conventional reality. which is different according to our karma. The karma is our base, is a base for our conventions, for our likings and dislikings. So the parikalpita is like seeing the form of the elephant, and the parinishpana, the perfect reality, is actually the disappearance of the elephant. Lanka Sutra, which is related to this tradition very much, explains that the mind is like an actor on the stage. The actor on the stage has a mask. The mask is called persona. In Latin language, the individual is called the persona, the mask. The Latin in the persona means mask. And the Indian theater, as we all know, the character of the actor is based on his mask. Same in Chinese theater, and very interesting also in Greek theaters, they have a similar concepts. Now, if the spectators penetrate what is behind the mask, the persona starts to get ashamed and he moves away from the stage, and the stage is compared to the world. And of course, getting ashamed of the world is nothing but the nirvana, disenchantment from the world. Very wonderful comparison. Unless we are, that is the same principle in yoga, same in Vedanta, same in Jainism, same in Patanjali system, same in Buddhism. Unless you have nirvana, disenchantment, actually the translators in English, they sometimes use disgust, but as Bhikkhu Bodhi has pointed, disgust is not the correct word. It means disenchantment, not to be attracted. When you're not attracted to the world, then you see the world in a different way. But because we are attracted to the world, we see again the world in a different way. And what we attracted to is our past habit, upachara, our past familiarity with the thing. If I am familiar with the beautiful girls, I will always pay attention to beautiful ones. If I'm familiar with the cars, I will always pay attention to the cars. If I'm familiar with the beautiful buildings, I want a house, I will always pay attention to the house. We pay attention to according to our familiarity with the objects, with the past. This is very important. And due to that, our mind gets transformed and in possession of these different likings and disliking based on the self. So, in order to realize the true nature of reality, we have to go beyond this delusion of the self. Well, this is Buddhism. The self, the very idea of the self, you have a similar in Patanjali. The very idea of the self comes from in fact, the wrong habit. When we don't have the wrong habits, we don't appropriate the self. But because we have the wrong habit, we appropriate the self. So we appropriate the world. So we appropriate the cosmos as if it had any possessor. But the cosmos does not need any possessor. This is dependent origination. Now, the parinishpana is the reality which is freed from this clinging based on the appropriation of the concepts of the names. So this parikalpita reality, if we want to understand the 6th chapter, parikalpita reality has asvabhava, no real nature whatsoever of any characteristics. The names have no any real characteristics in themselves. Like this is pada, this is food, this is noha in my language, and any language, I don't know in Marathi, but you will find many names in different languages. But yet we are talking about the same thing. So this name has no characteristic whatsoever. But actually, yet it has a power to produce some self-existent reality. So same like when you see the, you have a snake. Another example, you have a snake, so you became shocked and in fear. So this is our perception of reality. We are obsessed by our concepts which bring to us fear, bring to us a lot of worries, bring to us depressions, brings to us uncertainty, and bring to us anger connected with it. So this clinging to the self-existent nature in what the reality which is produced by concepts, that the reality which we cling to is like the seeing the snake and being shocked or afraid of the snake, fear of the snake. Then the appearance of the snake is like this dependent origination for us, which is based on the concepts, not on the reality. On names, which are different according to different groups of beings. Now, we have similar reactions because we are humans and we are, so to say, products of a similar civilization, modern civilization nowadays. So we have a very similar concept because we are influenced by science. What the science says is correct, but what the science says is changing almost every day. But still, we believe to that reality. So the appearance of the snake is this our dependent reality based on causes and conditions. But we do not see that this our causes and conditions are not based on the reality as it is. It is based on the reality of our past experience, which we have put together on the base of our past experience. Then the not seeing of the snake, the seeing of the rope is like the ultimate reality. Now, just like the Theravada or the realistic school explains, when you analyze the rope, you will not even see the rope because it's just a sensation of hardness, softness, smoothness, roughness, and temperature and cohesion and the movement and so on, vibration. So this is a real what you experience when you touch the rope. So the existence of the rope will disappear also. So the dependent originations that we see in the sense that we are not the Buddhas and we rely on our convention as being the true measure of reality is the reality which produces all kinds of fears in us, all kinds of judgments, according to which we this reality will appear to us. When I see a person and I pay attention to him, then I will already have some idea. It is a person I like, it is a person I don't like, it is a person I don't care about, it is a person who is interesting, who is not interesting, who belongs to this race or this group or this already this idea will come based on my past experience, right? And this past experience will be different according to different kinds of people. Even so, we are all people, we still have different reactions. Not to speak about the different classes of beings, the gods see our reactions as completely appropriate. Similarly, we see the reaction of the dogs, so it's completely appropriate. We owe it to money, but for dogs it's completely inappropriate. The dog holds to the bones, but even the decaying bones, but for us it's completely not appropriate. So this is the reality through which we see the dependent origination, is the reality which has which is not born, because we hold to this reality not based on our concepts, on our names, and such a reality has not been born. So it has the anutpatti svabhava. It has the nature of non-born reality. Like the appearance of the elephant produced by magic, that elephant has not been born in reality whatsoever, just like the snake, which we are mistaken for a rope, has never been born. It is just our imagination. Its birth is our imagination. Now, when we don't see any snake, when we don't see any elephant, this is the perfect reality. And so when we remove our clinging based on concept from dependent origination, then we can approach this reality by direct perception. So this is, briefly speaking, the approach of the Yogācāra, which is very important for understanding the next section, how to practice charita, charya, how to practice. And we are dealing with the 6th chapter, how to practice shamatha and vipassana, based on our understanding, previous understanding, that what we see actually is as it appears, but it is not as it really is. What we see is what appears to us to be, but what appears to us to be and what really is there are not the same thing. And we have to practice shamatha and vipassana to understand it. So here we come to the beginning of the 6th chapter, which we will continue to discuss tomorrow. Without this introduction, we would not come to any real understanding. First, we have to understand that mind is the base for our understanding of meditation, for our understanding of shamatha and vipassana. If we don't understand the mind, if we are deluded about the mind, we will always be, in some extent, always deluded by the conventional reality, which hides from us the highest truth, which is in non-dualistic understanding, the suchness. This is what the Buddha sees. This is also what the Arahat sees. There is not the much difference. Only the Arahat's understanding is not complete according to this tradition, because he has not the Dharma body. This is not idea strange to Theravada. The wise Shariputra says in Majjhima Nikaya, yo Buddham pasati, so Dhammam pasati, yo Dhammam pasati, so Buddham pasati. This is the origin of the idea of Dharmakaya, which is then developed in the Mahayana tradition as being the content of Buddha's realization. Not just the body of liberation, but the body of such. The Arahat, Buddha is also Arahat as a body of liberation. But the Arahat, unless he becomes realizes the Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, the highest realization, he will not get the body of Dharma. And how to get into the body of Dharma on the base of shamatha and vipassana, we will discuss tomorrow. And this 6th chapter starts with, I don't have the English translation, I translate directly from Chinese, so we can continue tomorrow how Maitreya answers, how the Buddha answers. The Maitreya is the one who questions, and the Buddha is the one who answers. And the Maitreya asks Buddha, the Bodhisattva, what is his ashraya? What is his base? And where he dwells, what is his dwelling? In the when he practices the shamatha and vipassana in accordance with the Mahayana. The Mahayana here means the yana leading to the Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. And we will continue tomorrow. So let us transfer merit. This is the beginning of the Bodhisattva practice. Eta vata chame samatha sabbe deva anumodantu sabbasantanti siddhi. Eta vata chame samatha sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabbasantanti siddhi. Eta vata chame samatha sabbe satta anumodantu sabbasantanti siddhi. And since I am representing the Chinese tradition, I do simple in Chinese tradition, year needs of may the merit of this practice spread to all beings so that we attain the state of Buddha.